So that is a diagram showing the orbital cavity, the lateral side with the lacrimal gland. This is the medial side. Superior oblique will be on the upper medial angle, and then the upper part and the lower part of the orbital cavity. What we can see here is the lacrimal nerve supplying the lacrimal gland, the abduced nerve supplying the lateral rectus, the superior division of the oculomotor to the levator palpebrae and the superior rectus, while the inferior division will be going to the medial rectus, the inferior rectus, and the inferior oblique. The frontal nerve will be directly under the roof above the levator, the optic nerve in the middle of the cavity, and that is the nasociliary at that angle between the superior oblique and the medial rectus, and that is the trochlear nerve, which is going to supply the superior oblique. That is another cadaveric specimen showing again the arrangement of such nerves. Still the lateral is this side, the medial is this side, upper and lower parts. So that is the supratrochlear nerve here, and that is the supraorbital nerve, this one here and here. These are the branch of the frontal nerve, which is this one here. The nasociliary, as we said, in the upper medial angle between the superior oblique and the medial rectus. Nerve to the superior rectus is here, which is branch from the superior division of the oculomotor. Nerve to medial rectus, again from the same, and oculomotor nerve itself is here. So these are again the distribution of the nerves within the orbital cavity. These are two other cadaveric specimens to show the nerves in position. Here, that is the eyeball here and here, still lateral and medial, as we can see. That is the ciliary ganglion here, which is attached to the oculomotor nerve, anteroethmoidal nerve, anteroethmoidal artery here, the frontal nerve, which passes above the levator palpebrae superioris muscle, directly under the bony roof of the orbit. Then the cribriform platypusmoid on each side here and here of the crista galli, which is this one and this one. And lastly, in this slide here, that is the abducent nerve, going to the lateral rectus, and this is again the same going to the lateral rectus. To continue, that is the optic nerve here, that is the supratrochlear, and that is the supraorbital, that is the frontal here. The short ciliary, which comes from the ciliary ganglion going to the eyeball here, to the muscles, and this is the trochlear nerve, which supply the superior oblique, that is the trochlear here. That is the nasociliary nerve, which passes, as we said, between the medial rectus and the superior oblique. That is the lacrimal nerve going to the lacrimal gland, that is the lacrimal gland over here. And these are the long ciliary, which go to sensory to the wall of the ball of the eyeball. Now, that is the nerves as they enter the orbit through the superior orbital fissure. From lateral to medial, that is what we call it the tendinous ring. So that is the medial side, the lateral side. Start with the common tendon or common tendinous ring. Then this is the lacrimal. This is the frontal. And this is the trochlear outside the ring. And then inside the ring between the two heads of the lateral rectus will be the superior division of oculomotor, then the nasociliary, then the inferior division of oculomotor, and lastly will be the abducent nerve. That is the arrangement within the superior fissure, and of course this is the optic nerve in the middle of the tendinous ring. That is the ciliary ganglion, a very interesting cadaveric specimen here, where you can find for each ganglion there is the roots, parasympathetic, which is the inferior division of oculomotor, that is the inferior division of oculomotor here, where it's giving branch to the ciliary ganglion. The sympathetic will come from the plexus of the nearby artery, that is the ophthalmic artery over here. And the sensory will be coming from the nasociliary branch of the oculomotor, where the ganglion will be suspended from it. And the ciliary ganglion itself, that is the ciliary ganglion here, and the short ciliary nerves to the sphincter papillae and ciliary muscles coming from the ganglion. That is the short ciliary nerves coming from the ciliary ganglion, which is attached to the branch from the oculomotor nerve. Come to the vessels. The vessels are the arteries and the veins. Let's start by the ophthalmic artery, where again this is the lateral side, that is the medial side with superior oblique and the trocula here. What we can see here is that is the ophthalmic artery itself, which leaves the internal carotid artery as it exits from the cavernous sinus, then enters the orbit through the optic canal, and then cross the optic nerve either anterior to it or deep to it, with 80% anterior and 20% posterior. And then along the medial layer of the orbit between the superior oblique and the lateral rectus to divide into supratrochular and dorsal nasal. Then it will give the central retinal artery, one of the branches of it, and this is a very important artery, of course, the first small branch of the ophthalmic artery, which begins below the optic nerve and lies on the dural sheath of the nerve, enter the inferior medial surface of the optic nerve to reach the eye and supplies the retina. To continue the main branches of the ophthalmic artery concerning the orbit, here is what call them the ciliary arteries, which are two groups, long and short, and posterior and anterior groups. The long posterior, usually two, which bears the sclera near the optic nerve and pass anterior to join the major arterial circle around the iris. They are not well described here, but this one of them, which the iris is supposed to be over here to form that circle around it. And there is short posterior ciliary arteries, which about 7. They come closer to the optic nerve here and then divide into 15 to 20 branches and pierce the sclera around the optic nerve to supply the choroid, while the anterior ciliary arteries arise from the muscular branches of the ophthalmic artery, which are mainly to the recti, reach the eyeball on the tendons of the recti muscles to form a circumcorneal subconjunctival vascular zone and pierce the sclera near the sclerocorneal junction. This is the main branches within the orbital cavity from the ophthalmic artery. Here is a summary of these branches. That is the internal carotid artery, which will give off the ophthalmic artery. That is the ophthalmic artery here, which comes through the tendinous ring with the optic nerve. And then these are the branches which we said posterior-thymoidal, anterior-thymoidal, dorsal nasal, that is the term branch of this one here, and supratrochular, and that is the supraorbital, the central artery of the retina here, the lacrimal artery is this one, and the posterior ciliary arteries are those one here. That is the branches of the ophthalmic. That's a diagram showing the veins in the orbital cavity. Again, that is the medial side, this is the lateral side. What we can see here is the superior and the inferior ophthalmic veins. They link with the anterior facial vein and the intracranial veins, and they have no valves They are devoid of valves, and it's important to understand the pathway of infection from the face to inside the cranial cavity. That is the superior ophthalmic vein, which is formed by the two tributaries, the supraorbital and the fascial vein. And they run with the ophthalmic artery and receive the corresponding tributaries, that superior ophthalmic, which are the two superior vertex vein of the eyeball and the central vein of the retina. It traverses the superior orbital fissure here, and usually above the common tendon or common tendinous ring of the recti, and ends in the cavernous sinus. That is the position of the cavernous sinus here. While the inferior ophthalmic vein, this one here, it begins as a network near the anterior region of the orbital floor and its medial wall, and then run backward on the inferior rectus across the inferior orbital fissure, then through the superior orbital fissure within or below the common tendinous again to drain directly to the cavernous sinus, which is this one here. It receives tributaries from the inferior rectus, the inferior oblique, the nasolacrimal sac, and the eyelids, and receives two inferior vertex veins of the eyeball, and communicates with the pterygoid plexus of veins, which are in the pterygopalatine fossa. The lymphatic drainage of the eyeball, other than those draining the conjunctiva, the rest of the lymph vessels are not well known. That is a sort of another summary for the veins of the orbit. That is the supratrochlear, the supraorbital, the angular vein at the inner canthus of the eye, the anterior facial vein, or what we call it usually the facial vein, which ends as angular vein, and that is the superior ophthalmic, and this is the inferior ophthalmic. As we said, it starts as capillary at the floor and the medial wall, and this is the central retinal vein, that is the cavernous sinus, and this is the pterygoid plexus of veins. That's all what we have about the vessels and the nerves of the orbit. Thank you for listening, and your comments are much appreciated and will be useful. If you have any comments, just write it down, and if you have any questions about the topic or the subject, or something is not clear for you, you can just put it on the wall of this YouTube and will be most welcomed. I will answer it immediately. Thank you again.